Let's say I wanted to reuse this box later, that I wanted to link it. So what I'm going to do before making a new file is open a project folder just so I have that, and I'll just drag it off on the side. And we're just going to Control N and make a new file. And one of my favorite things about Blender nowadays is how you can drag a file on top of Blender and choose to link. And you can just choose to link an entire collection. So we're just going to link a collection called collection. And I'm just going to delete the original cube. And you can see that I now have the scene in, and this scene has everything added to it. It has the cameras, it has the lights, and this stuff isn't able to be messed with unless I make it real. But the main thing is that, this collection wasn't the collection that I actually wanted to make or import in the first place. I mean, it is truly the collection that I was on with everything on it, but what if I wanted a collection to import that didn't actually have all this extra stuff added to it? So this collection that we linked just has too much stuff attached to it for it to be of any use. So I'm going to press Control-Shift-O, and we'll just open the previous iteration, and we're just not going to bother saving. So here we are back at the cube that started it all. And if we just come out of the camera view, we can look around and see that, we have all of this stuff that we probably don't want to bring in. And the easiest way to clean things for me would be to just press B and just draw boxes around everything, and then press H and then select it and press Control G. But there turned out to be a better way. And so if we select everything, we can go under settings, and you can see that evict, unify, sync has now been turned into manage, which will probably make a little bit more sense in our verbiage and documentation, as well as allowing us to expand upon this multifold. But new to this is the new Alt function, where if you Alt click it, it will create a collection that is actually named the file. And if we press F9, we can just either just let the name be nothing, which is what it is right now, or we can just name it something. So I'm just going to leave it as nothing, and we'll just click off. And if I were to just shift a collection instance and we just bring in QBox 201, you can see that we have exactly that as our collection instance. So we're just going to press X, delete it, Control S, and Control N, make a new file, and we're back to where we started. So we'll just delete this cube. And with our Windows Explorer, we're just going to drag this over and choose to link again. And we're just going to go under collection. And this time we're going to link in QBox 201. And so now we have our box here from the previous file. And so it's way lighter and easier to deal with, and I can duplicate it all over the place and use this as part of a more major scene without it, completely disintegrating the computer if I were dealing with, RAM limitations, or, we're on a lesser PC, or we're running out of video memory, or whatever situation could come up that requires that you would need to begin working just a little bit more efficiently. And the best part about it is, because I was able to bring this over just as the object by collecting it via using hops collect, which will also grab collection instances as well. So if your scene is built up of collection instances and you perform a collect, you'll also be able to collect those into a group instance as well to reuse those in other files. So if your file is built up out of group instances, we also care about ensuring that you get those to your destination with collect. So here we have all of our boxes, and the best part is I can just grab them, move them over. We'll press GZ1 to place them on the grid floor, press Alt V, maybe roll a blank light, and we look at this in render view, and we can just, completely start playing with this from a completely different perspective compared to what we had before, just using just that same file. I mean, we could have worked on a different collection or used a different scene, or a myriad of other options exist, but linking and appending is one of my favorites. However, today I'm not going to be talking about appending, which is basically appending all the data to the actual file itself, which is the same as just basically copying and pasting it, in my opinion. But I just wanted to show how you could use hops collect in order to improve your linking and appending experience. All right, so for starters, since these are all linked instances, I'm just going to select everything. And before I even do anything, I'm just going to power save. So this is now a power save of a bunch of linked instances of 202, Qbox 202. And we're just going to press Q, and under manage, we're just going to hold Alt and click this in order to collect this into a singular instance. And so if I wanted to, I could just press Control N and make a new file. And we talked about linking using Blender. I always want to make sure to talk about the vanilla methods in case there's naysayers out there who are thinking that I'm omitting certain details or something, which if you are in love with the vanilla methods of doing things, by all means, stick with it. But when it comes to us, we do like to try to experiment with variations on alternative ways to try things. So with that, PowerLink exists. And so with PowerLink, we can actually see that our blend files are supposed to be listed by the last file. So if we scroll all the way to the top, you can see that Qbox 203 is the last file. If we hit refresh, it should refresh listing the collections. And we see that only one collection is listed. So if we PowerLink that, we actually have everything that we had from the last file. So I am going to reopen the previous file. Let's try it again. And we'll just jump up one via Powersave. And jump up one more. And so we have everything selected. And we just want to Alt-click Manage. And for the sake of this, I'll actually lower my operation time to something more manageable, like maybe 2 seconds, so it's not hovering on screen so long. But now if I save the file and I were to make a new file, we can go under Powersave and jump over to PowerLink. And if we reload the collection list, we can see that there's now the collection that we created in the file previous. So if we choose to PowerLink this, we can see that we've actually linked that entire collection. And once you begin using PowerLink in conjunction with Powersave, you'll see this is a very different way for you to quickly bring assets into your scene and can allow for you to build things very quickly, especially if you're working similar to me where you're just building queue boxes and queue halls and stuff like that, and you just want to put it all together and just use blank light to just top it all off. So that's the next thing I'll be showing. All right, so to show how I use PowerLink in action, I'm just going to delete this cube and we'll just go under here and just start inserting some things. So first I'll insert this quick haul that I made, which is built up out of links, just like I was showing before, how you could use links to create things built up out of links. We'll also go under PowerLink and we'll bring in our Qbox collection, which should be this big plethora pile of boxes. You know, we'll change it up a little bit in the final demo. Instead of bringing in the exact same assets from the ad, we'll just bring in these star cubes that we've been talking about all day and just place them where they are needed. However, there is a fuse box I like. So you can actually click on the arrow and it'll bring up a search where we can just type in maybe fuse, F-U-S-E. There we go. And in fuse box, we'll find a collection called fuse box, the same name as the file because a collection has been made. And we'll just place this down. This was one of my favorite little towers I was looking at recently, realized it should make a comeback. So we'll just scale a couple of these down, just kind of eyeballing it. We'll place some on the other side. And we might even want to bring in a loose cue box. So I'll go back to the top where the list shows it in order of the last files edited. We'll just go to file 201 and just bring in Qbox 201, which we see is right here. And so with these hallways, I'm always cutting them out of cubes as well. So I'm able to snap them together and use increment snapping to just kind of play with some level design ideas. But that's kind of the foundation of some of the ideas in PowerLink, was to just kind of turn Powersave into a kind of a level design foundation tool for just kind of playing with the data that you get from having so many power saves. Because if you're like me, you'll end up with a lot of power saves very quickly, and depending on how impressive some of them are, you may want to try putting them together. So that's the purpose of this example. So if we look at our scene, this is what we're looking at so far. So the first thing I'm going to do is press Alt-VV, and then I'm going to press C to just turn off all the lights, and that'll give me a good starting point. So now I can press Alt-VB to just start scrolling through blank lights. However, I'm going to shift right click to place my 3D cursor here. So more than likely in the update of hard ops that you're using that'll be current, whenever you place your 3D cursor and you use blank light, it'll actually be orbiting around that location. So I'm actually just scrolling until I get a lot of area lights, and then I'm actually going to just grab this, because notice that whenever I move it, it's no longer tracking to the empty, and that's because I originally did not want that for this sort of plan that I had going. But you can actually toggle that off in the newer version of hard ops under blank light constraint, where if you have it on, it will automatically constrain to the empty. You can also turn this on in preferences, but for me, I won't be needing it because my goal is to, place it, press Alt G, Alt R, raise it up, maybe even press Q and change it from square to rectangle, and just grab the controls and just move these lights around just to play with different locations. It doesn't even matter what light locations are right now as far as their absolutes, because the goal isn't to set this up as the final configuration, but to just give it a starting point for whenever I do a rescroll of the light rig. So the more impactful that I have it and more varied in the lights, the more interesting the combinations should be whenever I start scrolling through them. So just giving a little bit of context there. So we'll turn this to a rectangle 2 and move it over here, and we may want to come from the side, really hit this thing hard from the side, except we want to also keep it very out of sight. And I think there's one more area light up here that we can just press Q, change to a rectangle as well. And we want this one in a very particular area, like maybe right there, but maybe not Z fighting, looks tacky. And the interesting thing about lights now is that if you duplicate them, they will also be added to the rig setup as well. So now we have this, very basic setup that's just built up out of just quick linked assets. And I was hoping to build like a quick haul, a quick box, another quick box, and just everything, and just show how you use PowerLink to just bring it all together so quick to just make a render and still be able to go back to your original files and make edits. But we're actually going to jump from PowerLink back over to Powersave, where I can just change this to, we'll just call this Q haul. If we click on Powersave, we see that it just saves as Q haul, which means that maybe there's not any other Q hauls. So weird. But we'll just go ahead and toggle auto pack and press Control S at this point, and we'll press Alt V, and instead of clicking on blank light, which will destroy all of our work, let me just tell you, we want to control click on blank light, and now we are scrolling through just random combinations. And so I'm just looking for a combination that I like, which I actually just saw and missed forever. That one's actually pretty cool. I can see some pretty cool ones here. That one's actually a winner. So we'll just look at this from the front and press Control Alt Numpad 0 to center our camera here. And our camera is now enabled, so we'll just select that, press GZ to pull it back, just so we start at the end, raise our PP, and we could probably even play with our lens to get a just a longer look down this hall. Maybe not, maybe something more like that. But just like that, we have our lighting set up. And so we could just save our scene if this is where we like it. So normally once I get to these points of getting a lighting setup that I actually like, I'll actually save the scene. And, you know, I'll continue playing around and duplicating things. In fact, your next urge might be to start box cutting at this time. But there is a bug that we're checking into that might prevent box cutter from working at this time with PowerLink assets, but I'm hoping that we actually get that ironed out before this release makes it out the door, or else, that will be a bit catastrophic. But other than that, this is the experience that you're looking at in front of you. We can press Control S, save it. We see that this box on top just isn't going to cut it. We press Alt V and just Control click blank light to just jump through just additional configurations just to see what we get. But if we don't like it, we can just right click and it at least puts us back to where we start. So we're just jumping through lights, and everything that we're lighting is just something that's just from a scene that isn't even here anymore. So now we could press Alt VV and turn our background back on. So we turned it off previously with V, or C, we turned it off with C. So we're just going to turn it back on, and now we can begin playing with what kind of reflection we want to contribute to the scene via the look dev environment that we're going to eventually transfer over to render by pressing R. So I like that one. I think that one can work. So we'll just click that, and that means that whenever we jump to render, we get exactly the same look. So hopefully this should give some insight on basically how I use PowerLink in conjunction with hops, and I hope you guys find this interesting. To show a little bit more as far as PowerLinking fun, I'll back out of camera mode, and we'll Shift D, duplicate this main hull, and we'll just RZ twice and rotate it, and I'll just use increment snap to get it right back where we started. And so we're looking at this on the inside, and I'm just going to move it down to offset it like so. And I figured having a duplicate that was offset would look pretty cool. However, filling in this gap would also look pretty cool. So another type of study that I often do inside of Powersave is stairs. So I have some stairs, and so we'll just PowerLink those in. And if we bring these stairs down, the textures will eventually show up. And of course, everything's shaded with just the blankest materials you've ever seen. And we'll just bring these stairs right down where we need them, and press S and X in order to scale that out. And now we have our scene just laid out for us. So there's a little bit more variation happening than just a straight narrow hull. So we'll just grab these boxes, and we'll place a whole bunch of boxes in this hull as well. Maybe on this side. It's the dirtiest sci-fi hallway. They just place boxes wherever. The hallway of discarded boxes. It's a few more boxes than I initially planned, but it gives us a place to hide behind and look at our scene, and hope that you guys admire the scene that I put together just ever so quick from some Powersave. So also that piece is supposed to be stacked on top of that anymore. But with that saved, we'll just scroll back a little bit. We'll grab our camera. We got our camera in position, so we'll just place it here. We can also press Alt V and press Q in order to turn on bloom, just in case we want a little bloom happening. But I only wanted bloom to be affected by the emission. I see that it got a little bit out there, so we'll just go under render in the hops drop down and just raise the threshold in order to get this back under control. And we see that's not really helping us too much. So maybe starting by lowering the intensity, maybe even working on that radius a little bit, but definitely lowering the intensity to something a little more bearable. And so this is what we're looking at with our scene so far. Keep in mind, we're just messing around with Powersaves, but I could press Alt V and control click blank light again in order to begin scrolling through just random iterations of lights for lighting this hallway. Some of these are pretty dramatic. However, if I want the original one back, I can always just right click and cancel to just get that one back. So I like to save right before I start messing with my light setups, just in case I need to revert my file or something as well. But I bet I can find one to actually drop this on, and it'll be a little bit more flattering for the type of hallway that we're going for now. So maybe even something like that. In fact, to really set this up, we could press D without Hops Tool up and just go inside of Decal Machine and bring up a nice Pawnee Ryu decal into the scene. Found you. That is not the 0 position. RX90, RZ90. A little hard to see in rendered mode. And we're just getting this position. We don't have the ability to snap these onto the surface or use decal project like normal, because they're collection instances and thus not real meshes, but that's fine. And we can actually change this to be metallic and lower the roughness a little bit, and maybe even duplicate it and set another one just right there. So now we have our hallway set. I just wanted to go in and just show me adding a few additional things to this as well, and also, you know, playing with that lighting setup. Just had to play with it a little bit more. You know, every time I scroll through, I just find a different look that I just fall in love with, but I just can't stop playing with these little tests.